And welcome back again to I was going to say who would win. Just getting done with the week of who would win. I actually got to do that video after this. Pokemon Team Creation Series. We keep this in because I don't edit, really. Didn't I do you last week? No, I did Hal Jordan last week. That's who I did. I know I did you about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it just feels like I had already done a Bleach character pretty recently, which I did. But Monkey2672 asked the question, what do I think the Pokemon team of Retsu Unohana, or Yajiro Unohana, which is a real name, is? So, if you're not familiar with Bleach, the short rundown for this character. In Bleach, there are, in the Soul Society, the spiritual world, aka kind of heavenish. It's kind of heaven, but not exactly. It's still not the best place in the world. There are 13 divisions of extremely powerful Shinigami, Soul Reapers, Death Gods, and they're all headed by captains. Now, in the original series, before we got our big time skip in the 1,000-Year Blood War, and until her ultimate end in the 1,000-Year Blood War, she was the captain of the 4th Division, which is the healing division. They're the medical corps. But she was always depicted as a very kind person, but clearly powerful enough to scare a lot of people. Well, as we learn in the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, not only is she a gifted healer, but she apparently was an absolute menace in her past. Because Yajiro Unohana, Yajiro means 1,000-sword style. She was an absolute monster. She bloodthirsty warrior, lived for the battlefield, lived to kill, lived to slice, lived to cut, lived to fight. Until she ultimately met a young Kenpachi Zaraki, who even as a child bested her ass. So this led to Kenpachi subconsciously suppressing his abilities, and her regretting that, and her ultimately in the end of this, or at least her story in the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, coming to again to train him and officially passed on her title of Kenpachi, which means the strongest Soul Reaper, as there can only be in one generation one Kenpachi. When she fought this kid, she knew right out the gate that this kid was the only one truly worthy of the title. And so that was her story. Unohana was a great character. I do wish we got an actual fight with her outside of Zaraki, where she might have had to actually fight an enemy. But it is what it is. A lot of fans kind of wish we gotten that, but still, her fight was great. What we ultimately got with her was really good, and the anime luckily expanded a lot on a few things about her, including that fight, which we actually got to see her Bankai in action, the second release of her sword. In the manga, she activated it, but we never knew what it was actually doing. We speculated, but we never actually knew what it was doing. In the anime, we actually got a really good idea of what the Bankai actually did without anyone actually telling us what it did. And so, this is where we begin. Not the Bankai, but this is now where we're beginning. Now, as a Shinigami, she wields a Zanpakuto, a sword that has ability specific to her, and it is a sentient being. There's a spirit that lives within the sword. It is a reflection of the user themselves. So in a Shinigami, unless you're like very unique, I would always just give them a Honedge. I think that's makes sense. It is a legitimate sword. Doubleblade only makes sense for someone who would be a dual wielder, which I don't believe I've done Kyoraku yet. Kyoraku and Jushiro Ukitake are the only two who I would logically make sense to give them dual blades, because they are the only two who wield a dual blade. And then Aegislash does make sense sometimes, but it depends. Like I honestly don't like Aegislash for Unohana. Not because it's not a good Pokemon and it couldn't fit, but it's a shield and a sword mixed together. I'm not saying I don't always do that, I'm not saying I don't do that, but it's got to be a particular character. She does not strike me as someone who uses the sword and the shield. While her healing abilities, as she says, she learned so she could fight longer in battle even after being wounded, that could work towards a defensive idea, and if you want to move them, swap them out, I don't see anything wrong with that. I think just a basic Honedge, though, works. But then we move into some of her actual abilities. For instance, and most importantly, she is known as a healer. Healing is her thing. And so there are a couple Pokemon on this team that all can learn healing moves. 3 specifically. I don't know about the 6th one I put on there, which was the last one. I mean, I'm pulling that up as I'm talking right now. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I'm just checking what exactly that Mon can learn for a test. Because that Mon can learn a healing move, then there you go. But she is known not just as, healing herself. She's the predominant healer within the Soul Society. She is their resident doctor, if you will. So, with that said, I needed a Pokemon on the team that was more or less a medic. A Pokemon that can not just heal itself, but can heal other Pokemon as well. And as I just found, by the way, real quick, without saying what the Pokemon is, the Pokemon I just found that I looked up that is also on the team can, in fact, learn a healing move. So, all works out in the end. So I went with Mega Audino. Now, why Mega Audino? Because, like Nurse Joyce, for instance, the nurses of the Pokemon world generally use Chanseys. Although the ones in Unova do use Audinos as a replacement, which kind of is what Audino is. Audino is somewhat the replacement for Chansey in Unova. If you really look at Unova's decks, there's a lot of parallels to Gen 1. Like, a lot. It's not 1-to-1. Definitely not. Because there's a lot more, like, lines in the Unova region. For example, there's far more ghost lines in the Unova region than there are in Kanto. There's only one ghost line. More dragon lines. More all that. But still, there's a lot of Mons that when you really break them down are basically stand-ins for Mons that were in Kanto. Because it kind of was a revisit of Kanto, at least spiritually. Just in a different region, all that. Brand new line, no old ones. Which is one of the reasons I actually did like it. It was a completely refreshing take. But Audino is the medic Chansey. But why did I go with Mega Audino? Well, its fairy type gives it a couple unique immunities. Mega Audinos, I should say, gives it a couple unique immunities. Normal Audino is just normal. But that means it does have an immunity from both dragon and ghost types, two extremely powerful types. It also is able to dish out a lot of damage. But beyond that, it's able to learn multiple different healing moves, including Life Dew. It has ability that can heal status conditions. It can have Regenerator. It can learn multiple different types of healing-based moves. You add the Mega Evolution on there. That can act like the Bankai. Activating your Bankai gives you the Mega Audino, sort of. So I like that as a analogy for the Bankai. But I do have some Pokemon on the team that actually represent the Zanpakuto as a whole anyway. So moving on from that, we have her Shikai. Now her Shikai, Minazuki, is one of the few that takes the form of an actual creature. First off, very few, there are almost no Shikais in the series, save for a non-canon is not the right word, because he is canon, but a non-main series character, a character who was in the novels. One of the former Kenpachis has an organic Zanpakuto that makes creatures. And technically, Komamura Zanpakuto, whenever we talk about him, does bring to life a creature, kind of, but not exactly. And Bankai doesn't. Point being, Minazuki manifests as a giant manta ray-like creature that can fly around and heals people in its stomach acids. It doesn't seem to have any real combat capabilities, but we don't know the full range of Minazuki's abilities. It could also spit acid that burns. Its stomach acid heals, we know that. But there's only one main manta ray in the entire series of Pokemon. You would think we would have gotten to the point where we got another manta ray with Pokemon at this point, because we've gotten pretty much either an extra evolution towards Mon that are based off an animal like Girafarig turns into Farigiraf. So we have technically two giraffe-based Pokemon. Although Girafarig is a little bit closer to an Okapi than a giraffe, to be fair. But Farigiraf definitely is a giraffe. We have multiple elephant-based Pokemon. We only technically have one lion Pokemon, but we've got multiple big cat Pokemon, multiple dog Pokemon. So you would think that, especially with the type of animal that a manta ray is, we would have gotten at this point another manta ray or a ray type of stingray at least. But no, we have not actually. There is only one. You have Mantike, but there's only one manta ray, and that is Mantine. And this actually works really well, because it is a flying water type, which means Minazuki is capable of flying. Yes, it has 2 eyes versus the 1, but you can't have anything exact in Pokemon. versus what you're comparing it to. And it learns multiple healing type moves, including Roost, Rest, which you can learn from TM, and Aqua Ring, all of which are healing based moves. So this works perfectly for Minazuki. Absolutely it does. Now, Minazuki's Bankai, which is also called Minazuki, you just change the kanji, which original Minazuki, I believe, is translates out to Flesh Drop Gorge. And then the Bankai is something like All Things End or something like that. The problem with doing her Bankai, which, by the way, the image I'm using for Unohana, which is a cool image, is her using her Bankai. Her Bankai seems to manifest in this red blood-like substance. It's implied to literally just be blood, or like the blood of every victim she's ever killed or something like that, or her blood or something like that. But it's a red blood-like substance that she can literally manipulate at her to her leisure. Literally, she surrounds the area in this substance, and she's literally controlling at her will, creating giant crescent arcs of blood, shielding herself with blood. She's also can constantly heal while this Bankai is activated. She can literally spin her sword so fast that it's like thousands of blades at once are coming. It's a blood. It's nuts, and I love it. It's such a cool take on a Bankai, or a Zanpakuto anyway. The problem here is that there is nothing even remotely close to that in terms of Pokemon. There's no blood manipulation Pokemon. Yes, you could talk about, say, Golbat feeds on blood, or Buzzwole also we know feeds on blood. There are Pokemon that in lore feed on blood, but nothing that manipulates blood. So I have to scale back and like, okay, blood is, there's a lot of water in our bodies. Blood has other things going on in it, but is predominantly made up of water. So the question is, can I use a water Pokemon as a substitute for this? And I went with Milotic. Milotic, again, can learn healing moves. I believe it can learn Rest as well as Aqua Ring. It is also a very elegant Pokemon. It is a very beautiful Pokemon. And Unohana is a very beautiful woman. So she has an elegance and a regal grace about her, as well as a tenderness when she is Retsu, not Yajiru. So I do, and Milotic is considered to be among the, if not the most beautiful Pokemon in the world. I love Milotic, by the way. It's a great Pokemon. First off, it's a good Pokemon just in battle. It's a good Pokemon, but it's a great design, too. I just wish it wasn't so freaking difficult to get. Like, don't get me wrong. Thanks to raid battles, I caught my Milotic in a raid battle in Scarlet and Violet when I went to Kitakami. But that doesn't mean it's that doesn't make it any easier to just like have it in game. And there's like the one you can actually fight and catch too, so that helps. And I think they know this as Game Freak. Like, they've kind of made some mistakes with evolutionary lines, because there really is not a lot of trade evolution anymore that gets brought out. Like, ever since, I want to say Gen 6. Yeah, ever since Gen 6, I can't think of any new Pokemon that evolved through trading. Don't get me wrong, there's some bull evolutionary methods. Not getting Palafin unless you're playing multiplayer or you catch it in a raid battle is stupid as hell. But yeah, I'm literally just drawing a blank on anything, like any new mon since Gen 6 that evolved through trade evolution methods. I mean, technically speaking, Alolan Golem would qualify under that, but you can get an Alolan Golem for free if you just trade a Pokemon for a Alolan Graveler. It'll evolve into Golem. So that technically counts, but I don't count it because you can still get an Alolan Golem. I can't think of anything immediate in Gen 8. Yeah, there's mon that evolved through certain means, but nothing through like trade. And then Gen 9, again, didn't really introduce anything. Again, some unique evolution methods, but nothing that evolves through a trade to the best of my knowledge. Yeah, I think they kind of realized that a lot of people don't like that anymore. So they gotta, make it so you can try to get as many of the trade evolutions as possible, as easily as possible. Especially if you don't have anyone to trade with. And B, just stop making those mon if they can. But yeah, Milotic and water manipulation, all that. The reds goes good with the crimson nature of her Bankai. So I like that. Next up, last mon on the team, which also can learn Life Dew, which is a healing move, is a Hatterene. Hatterene I chose because it's kind of representative of witch, but it's also known as a very cruel and dangerous mon. It is a hunter and kills other mon and eats them. So Yeah, this I think it works very well as the kind of sinister side of her, definitely. But last but not least, last and not least, or last but not least, that's what I'm gonna say. I said but last but not least. The last Mon on team, which was not the last Mon I chose, by the way. It was the fifth Mon I chose. In fact, was it the fifth Mon? No, actually, I think it was the fourth Mon I chose on the team. Now there's a symbolism here. Because with Kenpachi, there is a Mon on the team that you might not think immediately when you think Kenpachi, but when you think about this for a moment, the symbolism here, I think, is out the yin yang. And I went with Seviper. Why Seviper? One, poison still kind of works with Minazuki a little bit, the poison typing. Two, it's got a blade tail, so it does have a sword there. It is a bit of it's an aggressive Pokemon too, so it does kind of enjoy fighting. But spoilers for the Kenpachi video if you ever get around to watching that one. It's a much older video. I put a Zangoose on his team because Zangoose also are very battle-hardened Pokemon. But most importantly, Seviper and Zangoose have a relationship with each other. They are biologically programmed to kill each other pretty much and fight it out. Zangoose also has immunity. Literally is immune to poison type moves, which means Seviper's poison type moves don't work. At least they don't poison him at all. Which would work great because by all accounts, Zangoose should beat a Seviper in a fight. Just how Mongoose are supposed to be able to beat snakes or cobras most of the time in a fight. This works well with Unohana, who was basically the one who came before Kenpachi, the one who paved the way for Kenpachi to thrive and grow. I've used Zangoose a couple times on my teams in Heart Gold, Soul Silver, or not Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Ruby and Sapphire, as well as on. I love actually using a Zangoose. I think it actually just has a very basic but good design to it. And oh no, that's Spinda. I was about to say Zangoose. Zangooses are not weak, by the way, by any stretch of the means. They're actually got a really good base stat total. Hold on. Let me see here. The base stat total of Zangoose is it's like it's 458. That's a solid base stat total for a Pokemon. Like once you get past 400, you're now talking about Pokemon that are actually relatively usable. And their attack stat is like 116. Their attack stat is nuts for like a single stage Mon that that doesn't have an evolution. It's actually got a really good and like their weakest stats are, I think, their defense and special defense, and that's 60. Not sorry, there's defense, special defense, and special attack. Not fantastic by any stretch of the means for a Pokemon, but that could be a lot worse too. Their speed's 90. They got 73 for their defense. Yeah, so they have a really good stat line, honestly, Zangooses. Now, if you compare that to Seviper real quick, whose base, we'll see, I didn't actually look up the base stat total initially, but whose base stat total is, I believe they have the same base stat total, if I'm not mistaken. It's just balanced out differently. It's, 458. However, they have their main power distributed in their both special and physical attack. However, they sacrifice a lot of defense for that, and they're not as fast as Zangooses are either. So, in fact, the only thing they really have an edge over Zangoose in is special attack. That's really it. And I think their speed's okay, 65. But yeah, so if they hit a Zangoose with a special move that isn't poison, because Zangoose generally are immune, then they might be able to get a win out on them. The problem here with that is, in terms of special moves a Zangoose can learn, they can learn Trail Blaze. No, that's not a special move, that's a physical move. What's Acid Spray? But that's a poison type move. This is a good question. Can they learn Dark Pulse? They can learn Dark Pulse, not a poison move. They can learn Giga Drain, Seviper Skin. They can learn Flamethrower. That's impressive. Hyper Beam, Terra Blast. So yeah, they can learn a couple of special moves. But yeah, the problem is, while their special attack is better than Zangoose and better than Zangoose's special defense, because they learn mostly poison moves, it kind of balances out. So, yeah, ultimately, Zangoose usually would trump a Seviper in a fight, depending on the moves learned. So, without further ado, the final question of the day, as always, is how balanced is Retsu Unohana's Pokemon team? And honestly, it's not terribly unbalanced. If I were to just look at, say, it would just, without Audino being a fairy type, the team does have a slight issue with electric types because a third of the team is just going to get clapped by electric types and grass types, to be fair as well. Unfortunately, the team also isn't going to do very well against poison types either. Although it's more kind of neutral, especially if Audino goes into its Mega Evolution. Steel is slightly problematic for that as well, due to, again, Fairy being weak to Steel, Poison being weak to Steel, and Steel being immune to Poison. But other than that, there actually isn't a lot to say about that. I mean, yeah, you have some repeat typings, but they seem to have some... they have overlap with other typings that helps mitigate their weaknesses. For example, Fairy, Psychic is extremely weak to Dark types, but the Fairy type is resistant to Dark types. So Hatterene is not going to be... Hatterene's not going to be really hurt by that. Only Honedge has an issue with Dark types. Likewise, Steel types have issues with fighting, but there's only one Steel types on the team. They also have an issue with ground and fire. But again, there's no real issue with that except for Seviper, who also shares a weakness with ground, being poison. But again, there's no weakness that overlaps beyond any two Pokemon on this team, which I actually find very impressive for a change. Normally, I end up... I'm not going for a balanced team competitive-wise. I'm just going for a team that makes sense for the character. And this team, I thought, made sense for the character. So, this is the team I have: Retsu Unohana / Yajiru Unohana. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Let me know if you agree with this team, disagree, what would you do differently. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.